Hey guys, American Name Tab here. There's been a lot of excitement about the new Final Fantasy 15 trailer. It looks really good. I want to do a bit of an analysis of it because I was looking through YouTube. The most I've really heard people talk about is like, looks badass. Yeah, you throw a fireball, fight that thing, yeah. Well, let's try to analyze it a little more instead of just being like it's good or bad. There's ships in the sky. It's one of the first things you see. I hope there are a lot of ships in this game because I think 13 had kind of a lack. Well, no. There was ships, but I hope it's more ship sensitive. Like, I hope you can fly one, because that hasn't happened in a while. And to me, Final Fantasy having ships in it, badass ships like the Red Wings from 4, or Cid's, you know, the cursing pilot or astronaut Cid's ship in 7 or 6 with Setzer. It's about ships, and towards the end of the game you get to fly a ship, and that's so awesome. That's always been a great part of Final Fantasy for me. So I hope you can fly one. So I was glad to see that there's a lot of ships in the game, but I hope you can fly one. There seem to be some cute comedy aspects. Final Fantasy has always been about the comedy. So when they're eating at the dinner table, and it's like, and his tongue's green because he's eating the soup or whatever it is. That was cool to see that there was some kind of comedy. So the guy in the hat and the umbrella and the costume, you know, it's so funny, out of this whole trailer, I might be more fascinated by him than other aspects. Because, am I getting the impression that he could be the villain? Maybe he's, like, not the main villain at first, but he becomes the main villain, which we see in Final Fantasy sometimes. Kind of like Kefka, because it's Gestalt in the Empire, and Kefka's just a henchman, but then he becomes practically godlike towards the end. So I'm thinking this guy could be a villain. He's got a really interesting costume with the umbrella, and he's got some feather thing on his arm. If you watch the trailer really close, he says this is going to be quite an ordeal. But did you notice he's kind of smirking when he says that, like he's not taking it seriously? He's got that thin face too. He looks like a villain. I'm hoping for a Kefka-esque villain in Final Fantasy again. Bartanalis was good. Actually, I didn't really like the villains too much in 12. But Kefka's been one of the strongest villains. It would be good to go back to something like that. Is there a cover system in this game? Seemed like when he was... seems very action-orientated, and he's behind a wall, and then there's soldiers over here, and he like peeks over and shoots a fireball. So I'm wondering if there's like a cover system. That'd be kind of interesting, almost like a shooting aspect. It looks more open. Okay, if you watch the trailer, look for when it shows the mini-map. Looks like there's wide open, but he's still going to like a fixed location. Let's be careful not to say immediately that this game is more open, because it's hard to tell. And one of the down points, and everybody has said this to nauseam, one of the down points of 13 is it's very linear. It's like A to B. It's like walking down a hallway through a big part of the game until the end. Let's see if they make this more open to appease some of the critics of what was in 13, but I don't know. Let's be careful not to think that suddenly we're going to play Grand Theft Final Fantasy, because I still could see this being pretty linear. It's got the Behemoth, and Leviathan. You see one of the Behemoths in a battle in the street, and then you see a Leviathan. It's enormous, and there's like ships fighting it or something, and you're, as the main character, heading towards it. That's good. Those are Final Fantasy staples. I'm glad to see some of the summon creatures getting some props. Crystals has been a big staple of Final Fantasy. Swords look badass. What's a good Final Fantasy without an iconic sword? You know, you've got Cloud Sword. You've got Lightning Sword was cool. I know that game got a lot of shit, but I liked how it was was like not like a Swiss Army knife, but you know what I mean? It compacted in on itself. So yeah, was it Titus's father's sword, right? That sword was cool. Final Fantasy's always been about the swords, and the swords look cool for this. The marching guy and the soldiers behind him, to me that was kind of reminiscent of the Final Fantasy XII with the judges doing that badass march, and you've got the soldiers behind them and all that. That looks pretty cool. The soldiers look like crusaders or something in this. It's interesting. It's futuristic, but then all the soldiers look like old school, like crusader soldiers. Okay. One of my favorite parts of this trailer is it looked like the crystal room and a priest was guarding a crystal from these people that are stealing the crystals. It looked like the Empire is trying to get these crystals for power. And that is so Final Fantasy IV. And they go through city, stealing the crystals. And they're in this crystal room, and the priest is like, you can't do this, or I'm guarding the crystals or whatever. That's such a throwback to this one, Final Fantasy IV. This is the PSP version. If you've been interested in the Final Fantasy games, since this trailer, if it's generating hype for you, this is one of the ones to play. This was maybe the first video game I've played where it was all about story, and the story's really good. Good twists and turns and all that. Good relationships between Cecil and Rosa, and the envious Kain. Golbez, really great villain. It's kind of a throwback to Final Fantasy IV. I was really pleased about that. Yeah. This has been part 1. I've still got more things to talk about. Like, for instance, that guy that looks like Assassin's Creed or something. He's got the hood. And, what is it, White Mage, maybe? Who could be Cid in this game? I want to talk about the platform, like semi-platformer. I don't know if I want to get so semantic about the word platformer, because what comes to mind is like Super Mario. But you know that Assassin's Creed where you're jumping on buildings, jumping from rooftop to rooftop, like Infamous or something like that. Seems more orientated like that. That should be interesting. But I'm going to talk about those in the next video. This has been American Name Tab. Watch part 2 if you're as excited about Final Fantasy 15 as I am. Thank you.